Welcome to Infinite Universe with new interesting episode. Richard Goodall's story began in a quiet town called Tay-Ote, Indiana, where most people knew him simply as Mr. Richard, the janitor at Chauncey Rose Middle School. Every day, he walked the school hallways pushing his mop, cleaning classrooms, and making sure everything was in order. But there was something special about him that not everyone noticed at first. Whenever he sang, his voice carried through the building with a kind of emotion and power that made people stop and listen. His voice wasn't just nice to hear, it was something deeper, something that touched the hearts of those around him. The students who walked those halls every day grew used to hearing him hum or sing old Journey songs while he worked. Some would pause and smile, others would even sing along. But no one really thought about what that voice meant, or where it could take him. Richard didn't come from a musical family. He didn't go to fancy music schools or get professional lessons. He didn't even have a lot of money growing up. What he did have was a deep love for music and a stereo from Radio Shack. In his bedroom, where no one was watching, he would sing for hours. Music gave him comfort, gave him strength, and gave him a way to express all the feelings he kept inside. Life, however, didn't wait for dreams to come true. After high school, he couldn't afford college. Bills started to pile up, and he needed a job. That's when he took the janitor position at the local middle school. He thought it would be temporary, but he ended up staying there for more than 20 years. Even though cleaning classrooms and mopping floors wasn't his dream, he never let go of his passion for music. In fact, he found ways to keep singing alive. During school events like Veterans Day assemblies, talent shows, or lunchtime cleanups, Richard would sing. Students began calling him the singing janitor. It wasn't meant to be funny, they said it with respect and love. To many of the kids, his singing made school feel warmer, more welcoming. Teachers even said that his voice could stop a room. Some would come in early just to hear him sing before the school day started. It became a comforting part of the school's daily rhythm. But very few people knew how much singing truly meant to him. He didn't do it to get noticed or become famous. He did it because it helped him cope with life. Every song he sang came straight from his heart. For years, Richard quietly kept showing up for his job, singing to himself, and bringing joy to others. He never asked for attention. He never chased the spotlight. But everything changed with one performance. In 2022, during a regular school assembly, something unexpected happened. Richard was asked, or maybe offered, to sing. He chose Don't Stop Believin' by Journey, a song that had always meant a lot to him. When he stepped up to the microphone, he didn't plan on going viral or becoming a star. He just sang with all his heart, like he always did. A teaching assistant pulled out her phone and recorded the moment. Later, she posted the video on TikTok. What happened next shocked everyone. Within a few hours, the video started to get thousands of views. By the end of the weekend, it had over 1 million. People from all over the world were watching a janitor from Indiana sing with more heart than most professional performers. The video was shared on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. It spread like wildfire. But the most surprising thing was when Steve Perry, the original lead singer of Journey, left a comment. "I love this," he wrote. Richard couldn't believe it at first. He thought it might be fake. But it wasn't. It was real. Suddenly, Richard Goodall was no longer just the school janitor. He was a viral sensation. The local news covered his story, and people in Tay-Ote started to realize that the man they had passed in the hallway every day had a gift the world needed to hear. Students, teachers, parents, and even strangers were amazed. Cafes in town played his clip on loop. Teachers watched the video again and again, wiping away tears. Everyone said the same thing, it was about time the world saw what they had always known. But going viral was just the beginning. With all the attention came new opportunities, and one of them stood out, America's Got Talent. Richard had auditioned for shows before. In 2009, he tried out for America's Got Talent, but no one even got to hear him sing before he was cut. Years later, he sent an audition tape to The Voice, but all he received was a cold rejection email. So when AGT called again after his video went viral, he wasn't sure what to do. He felt like he didn't belong on a big stage. He told himself that people like him didn't make it that far. But Angie, his fiancée at the time, encouraged him. "What have you got to lose?" she said. So Richard took a leap of faith. He packed a suitcase, brought along a cooler full of lunch meat and cottage cheese to save money on food, and flew to Los Angeles. He walked into the AGT Theatre, nervous but hopeful, and stood in front of Simon Cowell, Heidi Klum, Howie Mandel, and Sofia Vergara. When he started to sing "Don't Stop Believin' Again," the same song from the school assembly, something magical happened. The audience stood to their feet. The judges leaned in. And then, Heidi Klum hit the golden buzzer. Confetti rained down. Richard stood in shock. His dream, one he had hidden away for so many years, was finally coming true. "I never wanted to be famous," he said through tears. "I just wanted to sing." Even Simon Cowell called the performance unforgettable. Backstage, Simon didn't say much, just gave Richard a quiet nod. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. It was a nod of respect. After that moment, Richard wasn't just the singing janitor anymore. He was a true contestant, a real contender. The judges didn't see him as a joke or a heartwarming story, they saw someone with talent, with soul, with something real. But what no one saw was how hard it had been to get to that point. The rejections, the doubts, the years of being overlooked, all of that was part of his journey. When the live shows came, the pressure grew. Cameras followed him everywhere, and people started to expect more. He had to choose whether to keep performing or return home. But no one expected what happened next. A week after standing on national television and winning America's hearts, Richard walked back into Chauncey Rose Middle School. No limo, no paparazzi, just him and his school keys. He picked up his mop and went back to work. People couldn't understand it. How could someone who just got a golden buzzer go back to cleaning classrooms? But for Richard, it wasn't strange at all. He told a reporter, "I'm still me. This school, these kids, they're part of who I am." He didn't see fame as a reason to forget where he came from. At school, the kids still called him Mr. Richard. They asked him to sing at lunch. Teachers greeted him with warm smiles. The school gave him the keys to the city. For them, seeing their janitor win a national talent show made them believe anything was possible. He made dreams feel real. But real life doesn't have a script. The camera crews leave, the buzz fades, and the bills still come. Richard knew that he couldn't stay in the same place forever. Music was calling him, and opportunities were growing. He had to choose between the job he loved and the dream that was finally within reach. What most people didn't know was that behind the bright lights and applause was a man still healing. Before the world discovered his talent, Richard had gone through the hardest loss of his life. He had been married to Patricia Sue for many years. They had built a life together, simple, loving, full of memories. But in 2021, Patricia was diagnosed with cancer. Her health declined quickly, and she passed away on June 19. Richard didn't make a big announcement. He didn't talk to the media. He shared a photo of her on Instagram with a short message, "I'm so sorry. I did my best, but my best wasn't good enough." His pain was raw and real. Losing Patricia changed him. He carried that grief with him, even as the world celebrated his voice. Every song he sang was filled with the emotion of someone who had loved deeply and lost deeply. His music was never just about hitting the right notes, it was about telling the truth. That's what people heard when he sang. That's why they cried when he performed. Richard Goodall's story isn't just about a janitor who became famous. It's about love, loss, resilience, and staying true to who you are. He showed the world that dreams don't have an expiration date. That talent can be found in the quietest places. That even after heartbreak, you can still sing. And maybe, just maybe, your voice can change everything. Even as new opportunities continue to come his way, Richard remains grounded. He hasn't forgotten where he started. His heart is still in Tay-Oat. His story is still unfolding. And for all the fame, the performances, the spotlight, he's still the same man who once sang Journey songs while pushing a mop down a school hallway. The world finally heard him. But his journey, in many ways, is just beginning. Richard once described cancer as feeling like being punched hard in the stomach and then told to get back up and keep going. He wasn't looking for sympathy when he said that, he just wanted to survive. And for him, singing was a kind of lifeline. He kept showing up to work at the school, kept singing in the hallways, and little by little, life started moving forward again. Then Angie came into his life. A year later, Richard shared a photo online of him and a woman at a Mexican restaurant. He captioned it, "Fun night with my lady at Taco Tequilas." Her name was Angie Vanoven. They shared a lot of laughter, and she became his biggest supporter, encouraging him to keep singing. When America's Got Talent called, Angie stood right by his side. They got married quietly, just days before the season 19 finale. It was a moment filled with deep emotions. Grief hadn't disappeared, but now it sat beside something new, hope. Richard still carried his sadness, but now he also wore a wedding ring. Most people watching Richard perform on television had no idea what was really going on behind his smile and his powerful voice. They saw a confident man singing his heart out on stage, but what they didn't see was the quiet man backstage, holding a photo of his late wife, Patricia, in his pocket. Every note he sang was filled with memories. Love had come to him twice, once in peace, and once through chaos. While the world cheered his new beginning, Richard knew that the past doesn't just disappear. What he didn't realize yet was that the pressures of sudden fame were going to collide with the parts of him that were still trying to heal. Winning America's Got Talent brought Richard a lot of happiness, but it also brought a strange kind of silence, the kind that arrives when the applause fades. Few people understand what it feels like to go from being unknown to being a national sensation in just a few weeks, especially when you're nearly 60 years old. Richard wasn't a young artist hoping to make it big, he was a man who had already faced real-life hardships. He had buried his wife, spent decades working at the same school, and now found himself under a different kind of pressure, staying relevant. That kind of pressure can be suffocating, especially for someone who still carries emotional wounds. To outsiders, it looked like a dream, but for Richard, it was heavy. Behind the bright lights and camera interviews was a man waking up alone, wondering if people still cared now that the voting was over. He admitted to a friend, "I should be happy all the time, but sometimes I'm not." It's hard to open up about feeling lonely when everyone around you assumes you're living a dream. At school, the students still ran up to him with hugs. The community still showed pride in his success. But when he went home, everything grew quiet. Angie often had to travel for work, sometimes for days, and Richard's schedule was unpredictable. Many nights ended with him sitting in front of a silent TV, with no one to share the moment. Fame hadn't erased his grief or made growing older any easier. In fact, it made him reflect even more. He often thought about the years he had stayed silent, keeping his voice to himself. There was pride in finally being heard, but also sadness for the time he lost waiting. He now sang in front of thousands, but in a strange way, he had never felt more alone. Most people didn't see that. They saw the confetti, the gold stage, the beaming smile. What they missed was the weight behind his eyes, the hesitation when someone asked, "How are you really doing?" Fame at his age was both a blessing and a burden. As he faced bigger stages and higher expectations, the pressure only grew. Because when the spotlight moves on, and it always does, what happens to the person left standing there, hoping the lights will return? Then came the rumors, the critics, and even whispers about an FBI investigation. The glow of his AGT victory didn't last long. Almost immediately, sarcastic tweets began appearing online, mocking another singer winning the show. Blogs, Reddit threads, and TikToks began picking apart every one of his performances. Some called his singing elevated karaoke. Others said he only won because of the emotional pull of nostalgia. "Don't Stop Believin' made people tear up, it's not even his song," one viewer wrote. Suddenly, this man who had opened his heart on stage was being torn apart by strangers. His fans rushed to defend him, angry to see a beloved figure being criticized for song choices and simplicity. But the negativity didn't stop there. People began questioning the show's history. Richard was the 8th singer to win in 19 seasons. Was there favoritism? Were the judges, including Simon Cowell, relying too much on emotional backstories instead of raw talent? Soon, people started asking whether America's Got Talent was really about talent or about ratings. Then things took an even darker turn. An anonymous blog claimed that Richard had ties to shady financial dealings related to a failed tech investment that popped up after his AGT win. Videos quickly spread online, suggesting he may have unknowingly endorsed a fraudulent company using his name and image to draw in fans as investors. The phrase FBI investigation began trending in hashtags. Richard never spoke out directly. His team released a short statement denying all illegal involvement. No official charges were made, and there was no formal investigation, but the damage had been done. People started wondering how a school janitor went from winning AGT to being involved in a possible federal scandal in just a few months. Some believed he was taken advantage of, caught in something bigger than he realized. Others accused him of hiding the truth. His most loyal supporters stood by him, saying, "Leave him alone, he gave us joy. He's not a criminal." The truth is still unclear. Richard's story is not simple. It's no longer just a feel-good tale. It has become something more complicated, a mix of inspiration, fame, and controversy. And with pressure building and questions still unanswered, one has to wonder, can he withstand what's coming next? When things got tough and the internet became cruel, his hometown didn't turn its back. It stood up for him. A man named Chris Burr started a GoFundMe when it became known that Richard couldn't afford to bring his loved ones to the AGT finals. The goal was small, but the response was overwhelming. In just days, donations soared past 6 figures. Hundreds of people chipped in, leaving messages like, "We believe in you and this town is behind you." When Richard came back home after the show, the mayor gave him the key to the city. Schools closed early, banners were strung across Main Street, and a massive crowd gathered at West Vigo Middle School. Students chanted his name, teachers cried, and a child held a sign that said, "Our janitor, our hero." His local band, Manopause, which he had quietly led for years, went from playing once a month to being booked every weekend. Places like Arches couldn't handle the crowd. The band used this wave of support not just to celebrate, but to raise money for music programs in local schools, places where Richard once mopped floors and now inspired children to dream. His community never judged him based on rumors. They saw him for who he really was, a kind man who sang to empty halls and never asked for anything in return. While online critics gossiped, his neighbors stood firm. But even the strongest hometown support has its limits. The demands of fame were increasing, and Richard had to decide whether to stay in the comfort of home or chase the stage that kept calling him. The whirlwind still hasn't stopped. Since his AGT win, Richard has performed the national anthem at major sports events, opened for Howie Mandel, and booked many live shows. He now has a manager. His calendar is filled with concert dates across the Midwest. The stage is his, but he hasn't quit his job. The janitor's closet at Chauncey Rose Middle School is still open. His name is still on the staff list. When asked if he'll leave his job, he says, "I haven't decided. I'll know when the time's right." For Richard, holding on to his routine isn't about needing the job. It's about staying grounded. He doesn't want tour buses or VIP treatment. He just wants to sing when he can and sweep floors when he needs to. He talks about balance, about not letting the fame take over. "I have no expectations," he told a podcast host. "If I get to sing more, great. If I go back to school full time, that's great too." That's not giving up, it's having perspective. His humility isn't a show. It protects him from the chaos that fame brings. He's not chasing anything. He's just open to whatever comes next. Whether it's a call to perform or a quiet moment at home, he welcomes it. But the spotlight doesn't stay still forever. Even as Richard takes each day as it comes, no one really knows how his story will end. Richard Goodall is more than a voice. He's more than a viral clip or a trophy. He's proof that strength doesn't always scream, it can quietly endure. Fame didn't find him until late in life, wrapped in a voice he had kept hidden for years. In a world focused on glitz and flash, we often forget the beauty of steady, honest talent. Richard reminds us that the greatest performers are sometimes the ones who sang in empty halls for no applause. His journey is both a warning and a quiet victory. It shows how ordinary lives can become extraordinary, but it also reminds us not to confuse fame with peace. Richard's story isn't just about reaching a dream. It's also about the cost of being seen too late. Through it all, Richard has stayed the same, humble, kind, and real. Fame didn't erase his past. It only added another chapter to his song. And most people still have no idea what's really happening to Richard Goodall. But maybe now, it's time they did. Thanks for watching. Keep it and stay tuned for more unique stories. Like and subscribe our channel. Have a good day.